the movement along that kind of serves as a ground, as a foundation for it, as a wellspring for it. So here we are again, So you asked me about Poets for Peace. So my friend Timothy Crowley decided, I think it was right after 9/11, that he wanted to do, well, actually, way before 9/11, he wanted to do an anthology for peace. And we just kind of were dragging on it. And then 9/11 happened, and he said, okay, I really want to do this now. And people from all over the country, all over the world submitted poetry for Peace. And then immigration, and what's the other word? I forget the other title. The other book also focused on
immigration. The two words are very much similar to each other.
Right, immigration is something else. But that's another anthology that I and diversity that I co-edited with Tim. And then there is Resisting Arrest, which is an anthology that my publisher, Jaki Press, put together during all of the beginning of all of the police brutality in recent years. And that is an amazing anthology with poets from all over the country. Some really heavy hitters with a foreword. The editor was Tony Medina up at Howard. And, this is when poetry is necessary. The poet is very necessary right now. And I find that even moving around the state and the country, people come to poetry readings because they're really searching for a solid place to stand. And they find that sometimes in poetry and spoken word. Because, it speaks to the heart. It's not a cerebral experience. If you're open to receive it, then it feeds you in a different kind of way.
Yeah, it seems to me that poetry is very important in the sense that it always addresses a lot of the issues that are going on, but sometimes it addresses them almost in a confrontational way, but sometimes it also addresses what's going on in a more, as you just said, cerebral kind of way. So it seems to me that it can attack you in both ways. Like there are some of the poets that you sit there and you're going like, this is definitely a poem that is geared toward what's going on in the world today, maybe geared toward the Orange Man and things of that nature. And then there are other poems that are more geared toward what's happening on our family life.
Well, and sometimes poetry becomes that container for the things that are hard to talk about, the things that are difficult for grief, for sorrow. It's a hard time right now to be a human being on the planet, not just to be an American and given what's going on in our culture, but it's hard to just be a human being given what's happening to our natural world. And sometimes, poetry becomes that container. I ask people, where do you, we can't carry our grief around every day 24/7 or it would devour us. We can't live in a sorrowful place, it will eat us alive. What containers do we have? And for me, it's writing, those containers that can help us hold the things that we need to hold, as well as joy and celebrations and happiness. But for me, it's all about the functionality and the everydayness, the ordinariness of how art shows up in our lives.
And how important do you think art is to people in general? Because that's one of the things that we talked about on the show before. It seems to me that art is very important, but sometimes it doesn't seem like we give the respect that we need to give to art. Because, we don't always honor our artists as a society the way we should. We talked about that on this show on a regular basis, that we give lip service to the fact that we want to honor our poets and our visual artists and our sculptors and all of our theater people, but it doesn't seem to me that we always do more than the lip service. So I was wondering what your feelings were on that, and so whether we're doing a good job of, one, honoring the artists the way that we should, and two, we're doing a good job of even teaching our kids about art. Because, a lot of times we have people that go through even like art appreciation courses, then I don't know that they necessarily have a true understanding of what they're appreciating.
Well, I mean, first of all, I think this is a very layered question because there is art and there's art and there's art. And, you know, a lot of the great art that's in museums where you pay a big fee to go visit them is not accessible to the public. There is art that's happening in our neighborhoods. You know what I'm saying? There are mirrors that are happening. I mean, I remember when graffiti artists were, you know what I mean, like they were the messengers. They were truly messengers. And I think as we as a people have always understood how art shows up in our lives. And sometimes we don't. Because when I think of cooking and culinary arts and not soul food in terms of a traditional definition of soul food, but the soul we put into food, into the preparations, into the sharing. You know, we use food for everything. But I'm glad you asked that question because, you know, I do have this little soft spot around we're a culture that's hung up on celebrities.
Right.
You know, we get hung up on the person who's on TV, the movie star, and I can even personalize this. I mean, there are people who were not giving me the time of day prior to Governor Roy Cooper selecting me as the Poet Laureate of North Carolina. And now, you know, I don't see myself as a celebrity. Nothing's changed in my life. But for some people now I matter. You know what I'm saying? You know, when you get sanctioned, when you get validated, and we as a people, and I'm going to say this, we're bad for this. You know, sometimes white folk have to validate us before we even look our way. So we're hung up on celebrities. I sit on a lot of boards where people ask for a lot of money to bring celebrated writers to North Carolina for festivals and, you know, conferences. And I will be called to participate in the same $200. And that person that you wrote the grant for that I'm sitting on to approve, you're going to give that person thousands of dollars. However, it's your local writer that the 8th grade teacher in the back of the room is going to come up to afterwards and say, Ms. Shelton Green, do you have a business card? I'd love for you to come speak to my class, you know, because the guy who flew in from California or the woman who flew in from New York, she ain't coming to the 8th grade class. You know, we're the ones who get called on, can you come speak at my fundraiser? And we come. And we keep on coming. And we continue to give because we know that's what we're supposed to do. But it gets old and it gets raggedy.
Yeah, because that's what I was going to ask. Is you know, my dad is an artist, and I know that's a conversation I have with him sometimes. Is that sometimes it gets to the point where people are asking for, as you just said, you to do it for either little or nothing, whereas they'll go out and
but you see, so, you know, this is a long conversation, and we don't have time to do it. But yeah, I mean, I think you are asking a very important question that as a community, and, you know, things are happening where I think that this is going to come full circle because I think that as a community, we're looking for ways to validate each other in the appropriate ways. You know what I'm saying? So I think there are those of us who, I mean, I don't dare ask my friends to do certain stuff, you know what I'm saying, unless I can, you know, I have money in hand or I know, or when someone asks me, can you get this person? It's like, well, do you have an honorarium? Or people who are calling me right now, and people assume that the North Carolina Poet Laureate is being paid a ton of money. I'm not being paid a ton of money. There's not an honorarium. There's a grant. That grant is supposed to be for Poet Laureate initiated programming that I might want to do. But because people around the state don't want to pay, I have 2019, the 1 year, I'll get it again in 2020, I have almost used up every penny of that money in lodging, mileage, and traveling across the state.
And we're not even in that.
I'm still an independent contractor. This is what I do for a living.
Right.
This is what I do for a living. I'm a speaker. I'm a writer. So there's so much work that we have to do in terms of community education. And the other side of that, it comes down to a matter of etiquette, because we also know that there are certain people that people would not dare even thinking about calling them up and asking them to do something without money in their hand. So we need to rethink how we, as you said, how we value, how we prioritize the writers in our community, musicians, the photographers, all of the artists. We really need to realize, you know what I'm saying, that we keep it rolling. We keep we are a piece of the heartbeat. We are the hands on some clock, and and that's real.
Very real. I've had a couple of other spoken word and other poets on. I always put them kind of on the spot, so I'm going to put Jaki on the spot. Is there like a favorite work that you have that is like speaks to you, Jaki Shelton Green, on this part of February of this at this time? You don't mind sharing with the audience. I don't need a whole one, but if we can get a little bit of one, that would be greatly appreciated.
So I could barely hear you, but I think you were saying, is there a poet that I'd like to...
Right, a poem that you'd like to share.
Oh, you want me to read a poem?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I didn't hear that at all. Let me walk back into my study. I didn't know what... Yeah, I the last thing you said kind of faded out. Hold on a second. No, I was not prepared for that, but I will be prepared in 1 minute.
All right.
So how long?
If you've got one that's, let's say, we can do 3 to 5 minutes. So if you got something shorter, we can do shorter. But 3 to... I'll do something short.
Okay. Since we've been talking about women in
yes.
prison,
yes.
This is a poem that I wrote several years ago. I did a residency with a group of women who were on death row, and I worked with them for a year. I went every Monday night for a year, and I only allowed them to write about the subject of their hands, because they were there for some alleged things that happened because of the power of their hands. And we talked about our hands and hands of people that we loved, and we did a lot of visualization, and we did a lot of writing. So this is a piece that I wrote from that, and we actually published this book. So this is a poem that I wrote about my grandmother's hands. I know the grandmother one had hands. I know the grandmother one had hands, but they were always in bowls, folding, pinching, rolling the dough, making the bread. I know the grandmother one had hands, but they were always underwater, sifting rice, bluing clothes, starching lives. I know the grandmother one had hands, but they were always in the earth, planting seeds, removing weeds, growing knives, burying sons. I know the grandmother one had hands, but they were always under the cloth, pushing it along, helping it birth into skirt, dress, curtains to lock out night. I know the grandmother one had hands, but they were always inside the hair, parting, plaiting, twisting it into rainbows. I know the grandmother one had hands, but they were always inside pockets, holding the knots, counting the twisted veins, holding on to herself, lest her hands disappear into sky. I know the grandmother one had hands, but they were always inside the clouds, poking holes for the rain to fall.
Yeah, that's very, very powerful. I remember my grandma's hands too. That got me to think about her. She's been gone several years now. I'm sure D was probably thinking about his grandma.